Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the fourth episode of the Tales from the Prick podcast. Here with me today, I have a really special guest and a main evented GCW in Japan against the Crazy Monkey Jun Kazai. Is a former Lord of Anarchy champion. He's been a CCW regular for over a year and is one of the most dangerous, most fucked up death matchers that ever lived on planet Earth and on the fucking hell. Ladies and gentlemen, the psycho resident of the Tales from the Prick podcast, G-Raver. Welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me on, man. I was glad to be a part of it. As soon as you got a hold of me, I was definitely like, well, I got to do this, man.
Yeah, I paid him for it. It wasn't his choice, but I think G-Raver has the best masks on the wrestling scene aside of others. So I think it was good sport to do it. So how you doing, man?
Good, man. I mean, I'm obviously just jumping back into things. Obviously, during a time where everything's kind of unknown, it keeps getting shittier and shittier out. So, a time to come back felt right, but at the same time, I'm like kind of bummed because everything's kind of fucking going backwards, and it bums me out.
All right. So, I have a lot of questions for you today. I hope we're gonna make it. And the first question is about, your in-ring experience, like the characters that you portrayed in the ring, because you've been doing this for 13 years right now, probably, if I can remember correctly.
It'll be close to 16. I've been out for, I would have been 16 had I gotten, not hurt and spent that year not out of my ass. But yeah, so it would be 15 right now.
All right. So what I want to ask you is, going back, for example, in 2015, I've recently seen the first Vicious Outcast Wrestling Lord of Anarchy tournament, and you portrayed this plug bringer, post-apocalyptic, dirty dude, and then going over in years, you've been portrayed this fucking psycho maniac tattooer. So, how did you change like that? Like, how did the change came in your gimmick?
The change came, and it's kind of crazy because I felt like it happened really organically. But when I started off, I had a mohawk and like brightly colored fucking pants, and like it wasn't as much me as I would have thought it was, seeing as I was always into the horror stuff. I was always into serial killer documentaries, things like that. So like it felt unnatural for me to be that way, but it seemed like I still seemed to get over with the fans being that way. So I didn't really, and once I started to develop that character, what happened when I tagged with my partner, his name was Jason Gorey at the time.
Yeah.
Gory's character is very, dark and that sort of thing. And once we tagged, we did like this almost kind of like a Gangrel bloodbath type situation where like,
Yeah.
I got covered in the blood, and then, obviously my attitude changed, my image changed. So then I sort of just kept developing it over time, and it kind of, devolved into what you see now. But like, it was cool to do that and do that in a way where it made complete sense at the time. And now it just makes even more sense that I've kind of taken that kind of that darkness ball and kind of ran with it. So, because that felt more natural to me than anything to be that way, because that's part of me. That's part of who I am. So
Yeah. We can see from what's behind of you, you're in a horror film addicted. You're in a horror persona in some kind of way. So,
absolutely.
and I think tattoos you have perfectly fit with your persona, both in and out the ring. Because for those who don't know, Brandon G-Raver, that it actually gets real name, you know. And is a professional tattooer and does some really sick stuff. And for those of you who don't know, there are lots of professional wrestlers that are actual tattooers as well. Probably the most famous one aside of G-Raver is Schlack. Another one is Lindsay Snow.
I was about to say Lindsay. She just wrestled last night on No Peace.
Yeah, I know. I've interviewed Neil Diamond Cutter. Hi, Neil.
Neil.
And it was just about to face her, and I saw they beat the living shit out of each other. So
They
can't
did.
see to, can't see to, I can't wait to see that match. So next question is about your stint in GCW, sorry, in CCW in 2017, because at the beginning of that year, Matt Tremont was in a storyline against Joey Janela after he betrayed him in Cage of Death. It was Team CCW against Team IWA Mid-South, and Matt Tremont betrayed Janela, portraying the Father Matthew Tremont persona, some kind of Manson typical persona. And there were you, Stockade, and Tremont in the Awakening. You were probably the top heel stable. But then all of a sudden, when Once in a Lifetime came along and Tremont faced Donita in a barbed wire match, the stable completely disappeared. So, why did it happen? Like, can you tell your experience with that?
Yeah. I'm gonna say for CZW, and I'm not too afraid to, shit on some things. Obviously, at this point, because I don't know where CZW is right now in its home or what status it's in as a company. But yeah, I mean, we're talking something that was really, really working well, and it was a great way to develop us into CZW, and then it was a great way that we could be able to branch off from it and do different things. But we had just kind of begun this whole thing, so like when it abruptly ended and we really had no chance to really develop it into what we wanted to develop it into, and that was due to the fact that there was too many fucking cooks in the kitchen, man. Like too many people with their ideas being thrown out that they didn't like, I don't know, groups and things like that. And I'm not going to pinpoint any specific person that I don't know who was like, oh, I don't want to do this group thing anymore. And because even after Matt's thing with Onita, they made him like the fucking general manager of CZW or something, like Mick Foley.
Yeah, I actually totally forgot about that. That's how awful the booking of that match was.
Yeah.
I mean, like they handed up the match in a 6-man tag with I can't remember how the Onita associates are called. I'm gonna be crucified for this probably. There was the guy with the red face paint and the other one. I can remember their names, but it was
I forget I forget the dude's name. He's a good dude too. I'm horrible. I'm the worst historian when it comes to like names and things like that, especially if I just met them once. But it was technically, like Onita's FMW crew that came with.
Yeah, I always travel with them. You always take them with him.
Yeah.
And if you want to do a 6-man tag, why don't you do it in the first place? Like Onita right now is really old, but I've recently seen that he's still, bat blasts pretty much everybody. Still does deathmatch. He took the exploding bat on himself, and he's over 60. So I think it would have been more sensible, to do this 6-man tag instead of a barbed wire. You gotta give the people what they want, as Excalibur always say on AEW. But
I think it was just a matter of like at first, because I mean we were. I think there was tinkerings like of ideas of maybe us being in that main event originally, in some capacity, and that we were just gonna kind of combine it that way because that way it'd be easier for who needed to do his thing with Matt, and we could, split it up and mutually, obviously it still worked out, and having, Grant a part of it was awesome, and then of course, Ricky and things like that. So, I mean, that I'm not, saying that was a bad idea. Obviously with us, it was just a matter of like, there was no rhyme or reason for our group to just disband. I mean, during that time, I understood what Matt wanted to do as far as his presentation with it, which mattered, which is they wanted, the Matt Tremont of old for this match. But we could still pull that back and be like, okay, now that that's done, we can go back to what we were doing. And I think that there was a way to do that, and they just didn't want to take that route, and then they just tapped out and gave up on it. Next thing you know, I'm fucking unemployed by CZW. I'm not there anymore. They're not asking me to come, be a part of it. They're not booking me. And it just, all of a sudden, that just became a, what's going on. And then I just stopped giving a shit after that. I was like, I don't really care at this point.
Well, at this point, I must, declare, which is objective, there was one time in which I won't say who told that, but they considered in GCW Tony Deppen as a generic guy who could just wrestle. Now is in a final battle in Ring of Honor, is a GCW gatekeeper.
Right.
And it's not just KG calling him like that. Is totally 100% is the gatekeeper of Game Changer Wrestling, and is killing it in Beyond Wrestling. He won the Discovery Gauntlet. He went on against Chris Dickinson. He went on against Alex Shelley. He went on against Alex Zane in his last match before he head out at WWE.
Right.
So
and these
I
are the
think,
it's like you said, that we're getting this kind of shafted situation where they were just like, oh, they were just, here kind of thing. But we always knew that they were good. It's just like Tony, KTB, and these guys now look at, what they're doing. The KTB's like jumping on AEW now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point. And
yeah,
I can remember, I will add an extra to this question. The fact that the stable disbanded, it was also because CZW would have been, and it didn't end up well with that. CCW was supposed to go on TV. That's also why, like, they didn't want mature satanic environment with that. That's also why it disbanded.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been that. I guess. I mean, at the same time, like, I don't know, because I mean, I don't think it was really, as far as that group, it wasn't really touching on that too much, other than imagery a little bit. But like, I don't know. Maybe because the father thing, or how Matt was, portraying himself as kind of a cult leader type thing. I don't know. I don't think that was. I mean, I know CZW wanted to go in different directions. They wanted to go into this like Ring of Honor type, position, that sort of thing, and start kind of phasing out some of the things that it kind of, held it together for years and years and years. And that was really ultimately, I think, a big mistake, because then it became so dwindled down that people started to like stop going to the fucking shows. And that's when you saw like, it looked like a COVID, like.
Yeah, before COVID was cool.
Yeah. But like, there was like 10, 11, 12 people in the audience, and it just, no one cared anymore. And then when you're a worker and that's somewhere you want to be. I trained at CZW school along with Shakara. I wanted to be a part of CZW. Like, that was the whole thing. And now to look at it like as this, I don't really give a shit kind of thing, kind of attitude towards it, which is, it's always so weird to me, because that was like the spot, but it's not the spot for me anymore. Like, I've surpassed that, you know what I mean? And it just,
yeah,
it's weird, I guess. I don't know.
I can understand that. There's still workers who went there after the CCW, GCW, split and all that shit. They didn't even do the thing with Nikki. And But I can understand why people don't want to work with DJ Hyde and CCW anymore from what I've seen the recent years. So I can totally understand your point, man. And talking about storyline, looking forward, I took up stuff. You had that terrible injury against Jimmy Lloyd and 6 other competitors. Well, the spot involved you and Jimmy Lloyd, of course, but it was a 9-man ladder match or something like that with also athletes from Black Label Pro. It was a show held by both Game Changer Wrestling and Black Label Pro. And after 14 months of absence in GCW, you came back at Nick Gage Invitational 5, and you literally set Jimmy Lloyd on fire after cutting a promo. And what actually impressed me is I've been a deathmatch wrestling fan since 2014, and I've seen classic GCW stuff, classic CZW stuff, IWA Mid-South, and all that. And I've rarely seen storylines in deathmatch wrestling, which is really sad because I think they actually permit it. And so what I'm gonna ask you is, don't you think that this is an awesome moment to be a deathmatch wrestling fan, aside of the talent, because the talent has always been there. They just, didn't use it. But I think, and that's what I'm gonna ask you. This is an awesome moment to be a deathmatch wrestling fan, and we were talking about this with Neil. People who actually dumped deathmatch wrestling and talk shit about DM wrestling now are fans of it just because storylines and the amazing amount of talent that there is. And now you're facing Jimmy Lloyd in the Last Man Standing at Good Riddance in the last GCW event of the year. So what do you think about this storyline improvement?
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you said that before, I said anything with it, because this is something too that when I had all this time off, all I could think about was like, there's so many aspects of wrestling that we're not like pinpointing and touching on anymore that I feel is still something that could still be there depending on how we go about it, which in my case, it was make it as real as it possibly can be. And being able to draw that in to the smallest details of things. And certain people could pick up on that. Some people could not. The fact that I went in the ring and I had my mask on the entire time, that psychology to a high level that I don't think some people might not even notice or grasp onto that.
Yeah, I'm an NWA classic professional wrestling fan. I'm a fucking nerd for that, so I actually noticed, but I loved it.
So you have this slow build to this moment of clarity, this moment of understanding, and then suddenly this decline. That is, I haven't seen that in a while. Like, and that was something to me that was super important to portray that. And with so much now, like you said too, with storylines and things in general, the people that are doing that, obviously the 440 guys, everywhere that they go, everything that they're doing is exactly what these little small details have mattered to me. And not that, I didn't see this. I mean, there were some points there. I missed tons of shows. I didn't watch anything. I was just so sick of, kind of feeding myself this want of wanting to be back. So I just kind of like declined. Yeah. I just was like, I don't want to fucking watch anything right now. But then when I started to get back into like watching it, going to some shows and seeing what the guys were doing, and they were doing stuff like that, and then I'm like, well, fuck. I'm like, that's exactly what I've been like hoping that I was going to start doing and start giving a shit about, because I feel like there is people out there that are going to give a shit about it. And I think people, I don't know. And it's fun to me to be like, I don't know what people are going to expect out of me and Jimmy. Like, I don't know what they're expecting, but I hope that they're expecting a little bit difference from the normal behavior or the normal thought process, I guess. And so like there's that idea, and knowing that how like aggressive it's gonna be, like even just to me, and knowing that like it's going to be ridiculous. So I'm hoping that the payoff, is there for everyone.
Yeah, that's I was just thinking about that. I was thinking about two things as you were answering my question. First one was that I genuinely smile when you told that you were about to come back and you came back to see shows live. You watch the shows, and that's because of the legacy you've built with your character and your performances. But I said also with your character, not only with your, deathmatch environment, spots,
Right.
bleeding buckets, and shit like that. And the second thing is, you've always been famous for, tattoo needles, glass, bricks. And I mean, I don't know if you're gonna do glass. I don't know if you're gonna do all sorts of fuckery, razor blades. But the fact that you're working on yourself as a worker and not only as a performer, that's what will make me, want to watch that last man standing match so bad. I think that what I was talking about this with Neil as well. What most of the death match wrestlers that I've seen, maybe just maybe because I'm a fan, I don't want to judge, maybe don't understand is that, I mean, everyone has said this for years, but it's not about you eating your opponents with a light tube. It's why, how, and the way you do it.
Right.
Because there are matches in which there are tons of light tubes, and I could sit there and watch them like this. Then maybe there is,
Just them
uh,
throwing
yeah, just throwing it.
don't care about the motions that they're making, and I'm sorry, but I was never a fan of that. I was never a fan of people not thinking it out and not making it about wrestling. Like number one, me in wrestling, and then taking those things and adding them to the wrestling. Like that's the first mistake that there were so many guys that did that. If you're a hack and slash guy, by all means, fucking, and as long as you're getting over doing it, fine. I'm all for you.
Yeah, me too.
I'm saying on my end, I think what got me over, what got guys like Alex over, Scotty Vortex, Danny Havoc, was just about how even Matt, they all do it in their own different way, but it was a matter of taking those things and manipulating them in a way. So we're doing it creatively. We keep creatively coming up with new things, and that becomes synonymous with us and what we bring to the table as a hybrid wrestler, if that's what you want to call it. Um, and yeah, you're right. I mean, and it's even with like you said, Neil gets it. There's other guys that get it, and maybe it's just not, they haven't found their path to how they're going to go about it doing that. But I would have never got over doing hack and slash. It's just not. If I would have came into GCW and was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna wrestle Danny Havoc, I'm just gonna hit him with light tubes the whole time, and that'll work, right?
Dan is probably the biggest representation of not
Right.
that is wrong to throw light tubes at each other just by I always quote that because I think it's the best representation of what was Danny's style, and God bless him.
Yeah.
uh you know there's this documentary from Vice, deathmatch wrestlers. I don't remember how it's called, but it's about Cage of Death, BJW events, Onita, and it actually made sketches of the weapons it was gonna use
Right.
and the way they would have used in the match. I mean, if you're not a wrestling fan and you hear, for example, that was his last match stipulation, the Viking funeral death match, you're probably gonna laugh. Even if you're a wrestling fan and you don't know death match or you've never come near death match, but just by watching it, I always try to make this understand to my friends who don't follow deathmatch wrestling. Danny Havoc is a storyteller, just like, for example, and I'm just putting in the biggest, the most exaggerated name of all time, probably Ric Flair. Like, just Ric
Right.
Flair was a storyteller in his own place. That's
Right.
what Danny Abbott was, wrestling is like ice cream. There are a lot of flavors. You just have to choose one, or why not everything? Because they maybe watch old Patrick Khan or Lou Tez match, but
Right.
then and sorry if I say that, I will jerk myself off on Joker versus Zandig
Yeah.
from 2004 because that match is fucking awesome.
Yeah, it
For
is. This is it's funny because I tweeted out recently, but yeah, I'm glad that there's that appreciation. But yeah, I tweeted out recently that I wanted to wrestle Joker because I've always wanted
yeah,
to. I always have
I
wanted
see
to.
that.
This is talking. I'm talking me behind the guardrail, watching CZW while doing security, while training. That's when I wanted to wrestle Joker because that's how into him I was at the time. I was just like, man, this dude's awesome. I got some of his backstory and stuff like that. So it was just one of those things where it's just like, man, this has to happen. If I'm gonna wrestle fucking, some of the legends that I thought growing up, I'm like, they'd be long gone out of this business before I would even ever have a chance to perform with them. And I'm wrestling some of them. I can wrestle Joker for sure because I'm like, I know he's still going and he's still there in it. He just wants to take a back seat a little bit, I think, obviously. But
Yeah, he's probably more in shape now than he was in 2004. Just you watch at him and you say, well, that's the Cambodian ex-murderer. The
right,
actual one is way more mature than he was in the Blackout environment. Even if I
right.
love Blackout, Eddie
I
Kingston,
did,
Ruckus, Sabian, I fucking love them.
yeah, I did too. I was a big fan, but I loved when CZW and then for a while there, like it dropped off. I don't know what happened, but they were making Joker like the fucking guy. Like they
Yeah,
were him the fucking guy. That he came back into it, obviously, but then they were making him like, and I don't know. I'd love to hear that story from him, man. Like like what happened or I don't know if it was a booking thing or I don't know, but they were making him like the fucking CZW guy to beat, man. And I was hyped on it. I was like, it was the last one I think I saw live in person was him in Brain Damage, and that
oh.
that was insane in itself. So
Every time one mention brain damage, I get emotional because the first death match I watched is him against John Moxley at the TOD8,
nice.
and it's still one of my favorites. That's how I went into death match actually, because my first experience was with Edge versus Mick Foley at WrestleMania 22 when I was 9, and I don't know how my parents allowed me to watch that, but anyway, here I am.
Love hearing stuff, man, because I love hearing when people got introduced to like wrestling at a certain time, and then obviously there's age gaps here, but like when you first saw something that you were like, oh shit, compared to what I saw when it was like, oh shit, like to other people, like I just think it's so crazy where that line falls of like what the first fucking thing is that they saw, and then they whatever they used to like jump over to, like that was like their their platform, and then they dove fucking right over here to this. I always like hearing that because like it's always such a weird time like frame and gap between things, and I love it. I love hearing people be like, like you just said, Edge and fucking Cactus. I love that match. I thought the match was great.
I thought it
Um,
was the show stealer of the night.
yeah,
And guess what? It was
it was.
actually a death match.
It was a death match. Essentially it was, but I mean, if you're going by, I'd say Japanese death match standards, they pretty much did everything that they would have done. You know,
Yeah.
uh, you know, so, the, we're talking Onita and Cactus and of time of then. So like, I just felt like it was the same
I
kind of.
think I think I was lucky because as a millennial, I am 23 and I've been watching wrestling since I was 7, actually. And I have had I've been lucky, because as actually Madman Ponda said, you had to know somebody maybe to have an FMW tape. Now
Right,
I just have to type FMW and the
right,
Bahu channel. It's gonna drop out on me with history, the top 10 matches, and I can actually watch the history of FMW. Now it's about the rarest thing, not having the thing. I'm
right.
still searching for the. I don't think it exists actually, but I'd love to see the full Kawasaki Dream non-tournament matches, but unfortunately, they don't fucking exist because AWA was a fucking mess in the first place. So, but I mean, it's like it's a guilty pleasure. Everyone loves it, but and no one will admit that it was, I mean, disastrous.
Yeah, I mean that sucked. I mean, with the whole situation, but like, yeah, that was one thing, and it's funny because I mean, you say that, and that was uh, pretty much to a degree my introduction into that type of wrestling. That's where it started for me. So that's what's crazy is like thinking back to then, and even when I saw it, it wasn't exactly on that format, and we already probably know what the format was, which was Insane Clowns fucking talking over it, and
Yeah,
so forth. But
the Stranglemania thing you're talking about.
Stranglemania, which
Yeah,
is literally sitting somewhere over there. But like, um, and I'm not a juggalo. I'm not a fan of Insane Clown Posse, but I still picked that up because I saw exploding on it. I saw fucking blood. I saw barbed wire. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, I picked up that VHS, and from that point, then that was really just this hole of like, I gotta figure out who these guys are. I gotta figure out, you know, uh, where's more of this? Where can I find more? And and it wasn't even that easy then. I mean, there was still like VHS things going on. There wasn't like distribution on this stuff. If you downloaded a clip online of something that happened cool at like ECW or in Japan, you had to wait 2 hours for a 15-second clip because we had dial up and like shit like
yeah.
that. It was
You're
fucking
not
crazy when I think about that.
you're not the first one telling me that, and well, in some way, I I still try to relive the beauty of have like a tape, or I don't have a tape recorder right now because I have to buy a new one. But I still think that one of the best feelings in the world is searching for a DVD and finally when it arrives in the mail, because unfortunately they don't distribute FMW Extreme Wrestling shitter in Italy. I mean, it's priceless because you actually want to see the event, but one of the first things you're gonna think is how good it looks on my in
Right.
my bedroom, like near to my bed. It's awesome. That's why I still buy wrestling DVDs, and I tend to prefer them to digital download or
Yeah.
streaming services. Even though independent wrestling
Yeah.
TV is awesome, or um,
I love physical media.
spots.
I've always been a fan of physical media of everything. I actually own, I'd say 90% of my own, footage or shows that I've been on or things like that. Just because I mean, for a time period there was that point. Like if you didn't grab the footage then, like I have stuff that's probably lost in the world, who knows where, in somebody's garage, rotting to death somewhere. I had stuff that if I didn't grab it when I did, there's just no way I would be able to obtain that. You know what I mean? I found footage the other night of what was it? It was GBW's Battle of Gettysburg, Night One, which opened up with Adam Cole versus DJ Hyde, me versus a guy named Eric Enders, who was like a local guy in Gettysburg. Um, Rich Swan, bunch of guys, and I'm like looking at this and I'm going, fuck, man, like nobody's ever seen this. Like no one knows
Yeah,
this thing.
yeah. That's another thing. That's a very interesting thing that I'm gonna pass to the next question, which was actually related to this in some way, but that's why, and someone who watched this podcast will actually understand me. That's why I'm always searching for like the Bret Hart versus Tom McGee version of deathmatch wrestling. Like, for those who don't know, Tom McGee and Bret Hart had a match in 1986, and that VHS went missing, because it wasn't recorded. God knows why. And I'm still searching and looking for example, IWA Mid-South shows, and you don't know what you can discover in the forgotten cards. Like, there are people who still watches King of the Death matches, and maybe they don't give a fuck about non-tournament matches, because I've recently found out, for example, that Jonathan Gresham, who is actually is the current Ring of Honor Pure Champion and Tag Team Champion, faced Tyler Black in a non-tournament match on night two of King of the Death matches. Or maybe, I don't know, people have actually missed, not all of course because it's a recent event, you versus Marcus Mathers, who was one of my favorite matches of the year, to be honest, because that was a really awesome story with the kid bleeding buckets and shit,
Thank you.
and you actually beating the living shit out of him, just challenging him to do better. That was your return match, if I can remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean, that was and that was the objective. Like that's been my objective with all the kids there. I've had the most fun at fucking H2O and Matt Tremont's than I've had, and crazy when I think about it. I mean, obviously in a long time, but like even where I'm doing with some of the other major ones, I haven't really tapped into that yet. I haven't really. I've done a lot of my stuff down at Matt's, and like I've been working with all of his kids, and the story is that they need to prove themselves and they need to fucking try to beat me. If they can't beat me, then they don't, but they'll get my respect out of it for having, gone
Try.
through everything and worked for it and worked hard for it. His kids are fucking phenomenal. And so far, him, Austin, Luke, Gigi, I'm still going to face Dylan McKay here coming up. He's insane. He does some insane shit, but like, yeah, like that was, that's what mattered is like these kids came out and they put 100% into it and they fucking, they drove it home with what they wanted to do. And, they've been doing awesome with that.
Yeah, the moral of this story is just, go on. When you see the shell, just
Yeah.
go deep down and try to find something. I don't. I won't say more interesting, but I won't say better. Sorry, but I'd say more interesting. I'm all into matches that probably no one except those who booked it and wrestled it know they happened.
Right.
And just about this, I will change the question a little bit. In your when Jim Cornette launched the lawsuit against you, just before you say that you don't actually like anything that is done in the past. To be honest, I like some shit that is done. I'm gonna say it, sincerely. I think in some way was a good manager, but I think is out of time right now. So I'm gonna ask. You've been, of course, a deathmatch wrestling fan since you were a kid, watching Stranglemania, Insane Clown Posse, Kawasaki Dream, and Japan stuff. But uh, I could see you have lots of WWE major figures, major
Yeah.
wrestling promotions figure.
Yep.
So, how did you grow up idolizing? Who did who did you idolize as you grew up?
I would, I mean, this goes back obviously when I was a kid and I had like, obviously I had the big rubber LJNs and, and I had some Hasbros, I think, but, like at the time, obviously, like I grew up and I liked Ultimate Warrior. We were talking, me and a buddy were talking about this last night. It was funny. We liked Ultimate Warrior because it was his character. It was really everything else. But as we got older and we went back and looked at some of the Ultimate Warriors matches, aside from guys that he was working at, and this isn't to bash him, but this is just what it was. This is the truth. He didn't have the greatest matches in the world, but
No, but
he had some good ones with some guys that were really working with him and really, really trying to get him. They were doing what they were supposed to do, basically. And those matches then came out and, they looked great. But aside from that, I looked at it and I'm like, oh shit, like, did I really ever really? And I'm like, yeah, I did, because I didn't know any better. I didn't know then as a child, that some of the performance issues that were happening in the ring, I wasn't really aware of. I just saw him and he's like picking the guy up and he's just throwing him down on the ground. I
Yeah.
didn't know that particularly, he should probably been a little bit safer with that or performing that in a different manner or however and so on and so forth. So I really, I look at that. I look at the people that, I attached myself as I kept going. And then I liked guys like Ricky Steamboat and things like that, which to a child's eye, I don't know that Ricky Steamboat, for some people, I'd say if you go by today's standards of like, a lot of people feel, I don't know if they just don't have the attention span for some of that stuff. I don't know what it is, but like, I wouldn't take a kid from nowadays and show him Ricky Dragon and then be like, I don't know if you're going to like him or not. Like,
Yeah, I understand it.
you know what I mean? But the fact that I was like, I don't know, I was all about it. I was like, he was good. And obviously there was a reason to watch him, but like I would say was centered more around the adult fan, like the not so small kids, but maybe the adult fan in people and going, wow, he can really, really wrestle. He can really go. Macho Man, same kind of thing. But Macho Man still had a lot of charisma, and they used him in a different capacity then, I guess. I would say over top of Ricky. But like, then as it kept going and going and going, and the more and more I started to like, really latch onto when it mattered the most, I think was obviously, middle school and looking at, guys like Hayabusa, looking at Sabu, looking at, the Hardys, looking at, even Edge and Christian and the Dudleys and Rey Mysterio. There's so many guys I could think of that I just instantly just felt a connection with. Raven, obviously. It's just certain guys there, and it just I mashed them all into my head. I think as a kid, I just kind of crunched them all in there, and I was just like, man, it'd be cool if somebody did this, and then they did this, but they did the Raven Effect DDT, and I was all about that. So I don't know. I attached myself to guys like that. It was the hybrid guys, but then there was also brawlers and stuff that I was into, and then I kind of I've always attached that to how I go about what I do in the ring. And it's been like that. And I think it's happened once again. I use the word pretty lightly anymore, is just organically and naturally happening. You just do it out of just this memory game that you've played with yourself for years and years, watching these fucking guys do some of the most amazing shit, and also doing the most technical fucking psychological fucking mind warping type stuff. And combining all that into a single person was, I think, my objective at some point. And then even more so now than ever, that I would say that a lot of those influences I see more so than any that happen now, more naturally and organically, just how I'm presenting myself or trying to present myself, at least to the fans and things like that, or at least, and then my performance wise in the ring, just trying to show off different things and maybe take a step back from all of the high flying in the world and things like that. Because I was also looked at always as like a high flyer. And I think it was just because of some of my lucha background and, things like that. But I don't consider myself just a high flyer. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I see you can do both high flying shit, but I've actually saw you do math wrestling sometimes.
right. Which is crazy.
That's a mashup, fucking insects. You know, I've seen you do pretty much everything, and I can understand now that you're telling me that you were actually into all this mashups of styles. Like, I understand you because when I was a kid, I had this superhero mentality. Like on one side, maybe Captain America was John Cena, and on the other side there was Big Show that was Thanos, maybe just to point
Right.
out something simple. But the thing that I've never understood about me is I wasn't a problem child. I was probably the worst uh, mess bullied kid in town one of the most, this guy who watches wrestling, just avoid him like he has COVID before COVID was a thing.
Right.
And uh, I don't know, maybe it was just my rage for not being accepted, but on one side there was this superhero thing, superhero movie thing. On the other side there were guys like Edge that you just couldn't like it as a heel. You just had to hate him because he was a despicable person. But I don't know why I loved him. Maybe he had this sex and violence exploit,
It
persona.
it resonated somewhere, obviously, because like even if it was people that you've interacted with, I think it becomes almost like this reality of like this, even though Edge isn't that, he's probably not that guy. There is that guy. Like that
Yeah,
guy is in real life. Like, and I
yeah.
mean, that's what I've chalked it up to, at least for myself sometimes.
Yeah, I've always loved larger than life characters. That's probably why my favorite promotion ever is Extreme Championship Wrestling, the original one, not that shit that WWE did back in 2006.
Right.
Actually, the two one-night stands was good, but they were just tributes, nothing to do with the whole ECW. But I think I'm not telling you anything that you don't know for yourself.
Right.
And what I'm gonna say to end this question is, uh, while kids, because in 2005, 2004, 2005, um, there pro wrestling in Italy was a thing. They also went to my city, which is Livorno, to do SmackDown taping, not taping, sorry, house show, and people all went there. When I went to Florence in 2007 for my first wrestling live shows, it was a WrestleMania Revenge Tour. There was Raw, and it was the only date in which Shawn Michaels, who was my favorite wrestler at the time, and probably still is, uh, he wasn't there. But anyway, it was a good show for sure. And I completely lost my point. But what I was gonna say is, while all the kids was idolizing John Cena and Big Show and Eddie Guerrero, well, everyone idolizes Eddie Guerrero. I still do, but Rey Mysterio, and I still do it with him as well. But I was all into characters like Terry Funk, Tommy Dreamer, Sandman, Raven, because I discovered him from TNA. TNA wasn't popular in Italy. It was on a channel here. But while everyone was actually this on the screen watching AJ Styles, I couldn't wait to watch Homicide and Hernandez, the LAX, the classic LAX, and Abyss
Yep.
doing matches. I've always been like more dark personas oriented with wrestling, and I've always loved larger than life characters. That's why I love when real life matters. Join wrestling, and that's actually what you did with Jimmy. Like, you've suffered a lot from your injury, and now you're gonna literally set him on fire. I can't
Yeah.
wait to see that match, man. I'm fucking hyped.
Thank
And
you. I mean, it's super important to me because even with that promo and what I said, like there wasn't anything about that promo that was a lie. There was none of that was a lie at all. Like none of it. So, and whether people know that or not, or know that was how I felt or I expressed any of that stuff, that those were all everything I said was 100% my real emotions and how I felt and what had happened and leading up into that point of setting Jimmy on fire. That it was just literally people don't know the half of how like condensed that was, even for what it was and how I was saying it and things like that. But yeah, I mean, this all in itself, I mean, especially being at GCW, this is where I wanted to really show this and do this, and this is the spot to do it at. So when that does happen, which is fairly soon, so like, I'm just hoping, well, hopefully the world doesn't shut down. But even if it does, I think we're still going to be hopefully game on.
I'd love to see it with a little bit of a crowd at least, because Slime season was a good show with my favorite GCW match of the year for now, which was Blake Christian versus Leo Rush, and I can't accept the fact that I'm 23. Blake Christian is born after me, is younger than me, and is doing that stuff in New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Right.
There are talents like Starboy Charlie and, as you told, Marcus Mathers,
Yeah.
Dylan McKay. They're younger than me and they're doing all that stuff. But Orson Welles directed Citizen Kane when he was 26, so maybe I'm still in time to do something important.
This is true.
So, about great events with a really fired up crowd. You wrestled Matt Tremont at what I consider to be the best independent show of all time since like maybe 2000, which is They Said It Couldn't Be Done. I was legitimately thrilled by that show. I haven't seen this from that point on because, when you watch something for the first time and you get so into it, so captivated by it, that you're afraid you're gonna enjoy it less when you watch it a second time. That's how I am with that event.
Right.
I'm afraid to rewatch it because I still had the feel. I don't want to lose it. And how it was.
I'm
How
happy.
it was.
That was like top. That's one of my top favorite matches ever. So like that whole event was just, if you look at it, watching it from start to finish, everybody that did fucking wrestled on that show, it was just such a smooth show overall. If I handed any GCW show to anybody to watch, it would be like, here, watch this one.
Yeah, that's the best one. It's like WrestleMania 17. Everyone agrees with that. It may not be the favorites of everyone, but when it comes to that, that's perfection. That's what a show is supposed to be. But you were saying, I think you were happy about something because I know I imagine that you were actually, really proud about that performance in that event. I think it was one of the best matches of the night. And you were saying that we're happy about something about this event.
Just you're saying about that event, because of it being like one of my top favorite matches, and because of it coming out so, going out to that show, like I knew like it was like fucking A. I'm like, Alex and Jun Kasai is the main event. What the fuck can we do to like match that? You know what I mean? Like match it or just play up enough of one thing where it could stand out on its own away from that. And I'm like, even with Schlack and Nick, I'm like, they're just gonna murder each other right from the gate. So I already know what they're gonna do. And I'm like, but shit, and it was that pressure. It was the pressure of like knowing it. And then when we got there, me and Matt were so fucking relaxed. Like we were so relaxed as if nothing was going to go wrong, and nothing went wrong. So like it just, and that translated so much in that match to a point of, just what I've always wanted to portray myself as. And enough emotion and character driven stuff, enough with facials. Everything that we were doing was going to matter. And then at the end, the end result of it is like, I'm watching it back and, Matt tells me from time to time, he's like, I put that match in, man. If I'm ever feeling down or something, he's like, I put that match in, man. And I just go, holy shit. And I'm like, yeah, like it's the same thing.
Yeah. The funny thing about that show and the awesome thing as well, both at the same time, is even I can remember that the only match that was, in my opinion, a little bit a little bit less good as the other ones, which doesn't mean it was bad. It was the opener. I have a really personal philosophy about the openers. Like, if I'm gonna like the opener, I'm probably gonna like all the rest of the show. And when I watched Nick Webb versus KTB, I still remember that there was that match there, even though it was less good than all the rest. Like Shane Mercer versus Eli was nuts. Dickinson versus Deppen was probably my favorite match of the night, if not that match related.
Yeah.
I can't even remember there was a three-way match. I can remember there was Eric Ryan, Marcus Crane, and I think the last one was Jimmy, if I can remember correctly.
Yeah, it was Jimmy, Marcus.
if I have an image, if I still bring with me the image of Marcus Crane also driving Jimmy over Eric on the pane
On
of
pin,
glass
right,
with,
it's in front of him.
you
Yeah.
know, that fucked him up really serious if I can remember correctly.
Yep.
And really, that event is so special. It's like I can remember the order of the matches, but I think you versus Tremont was one of the last ones because there was,
It was like right before Gage and
yeah,
Slap,
it
and
was
then
the second match before the main event, the actual main event. And what I thought is this is like Undertaker versus Triple H from WrestleMania 17. Like, how can you do better after the the Shane McMahon versus Vince McMahon stuff,
right,
the Third Angle versus Chris Benoit, and all that really good mid-carding stuff. Because at WrestleMania 17, even the six-man tag with the Right to Censor and the APA and Taz was good, even though it was 5 minutes long.
right,
And when something is good from top to bottom, everything is gonna go well. Like
yeah,
that's what I thought your match was. Like the
yeah,
Undertaker versus Triple H of that night. It's awesome, even though there was plenty of awesome matches that night.
yeah. And I appreciate when I hear that because I hear that more than often, and I see it online. People say, we'll bring that up and mention it online and stuff because I think I get worried sometimes. Like, I mean, I think every performer does. Is that what you're gonna do? It's so weird how it has like this back catalog of like people will go and they'll watch stuff that's like, oh shit, like I didn't know that this was a thing. Or they go back and they watch it. Like there's stuff coming out from years ago that are just like hitting people more so now than ever. Whether it was that Tournament of Death or whether it had something to do with Necro or Pondo or whoever, Drake Younger, Scotty Vortex, Danny, obviously. These are all things that are like they've been around for so long. I've seen them so long ago, or I was there in person being a security guard or doing whatever that I had to do. But like knowing that I'm like, fuck, are people gonna remember this years from now? Like, are they gonna know that this stuff exists? I don't know. Like, so it's always scary to think like if it's gonna go completely unwarranted, years down the road that people aren't gonna remember that happened. But then I think like, is it going to be the same effect as it is now? Like where some people have seen it and then they'll be like, oh, if you haven't seen this show years from now, like go watch this, or the footage will pop up online of me headbutting Matt with tattoo needles in my head. I don't know. Like, and then it proves me completely wrong sometimes. Like this stuff will come out months later and somebody will post it and be like, "Oh, check this out. This is from they said it couldn't be done and blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Fuck, man." I'm like, "Is this how this is gonna keep going?" Like, and it's kind of keeps that memory up. At least when it's all over and said and done for any of us, we hope that if anything, they're gonna remember what we did.
Yeah, I always try to keep the memories alive. Like I'm not a cookie person, but every time I watch something and people discover it after me, and they do really years after I watched it, I'm all like, "Buongiorno, you finally watch it."
Yeah.
Like I've been saying this for years that GCW is the fucking product. And now I'm probably gonna say that ICW No Holds Barred is the fucking product, but there, fortunately in Italy there's a solid fan base. Well, there's a really underground one because wrestling is not so popular, let alone like deathmatch wrestling. But
Right. Right.
there's a more solid fan base for ICW No Holds Barred now at the beginning of it than it was with GCW. But I must say, ICW was, it had the privilege, and it was easier for that promotion to do what it's doing and connect with fans because GCW, even though they have a rivalry right now, I don't give a fuck because I'm gonna get two promotion at the price of one. So
Right. I mean, this
more
is
wrestling for us as a fan. I can't really stand fans who just, I criticize WWE as I'm an All Elite Wrestling fan, but when there's an awesome match in WWE, maybe I hear that Roman Reigns is doing awesome things in WWE,
Right.
which is really mind blowing for me because it was one of his biggest haters back in the day. I
Yeah.
mean, I just think outside the box. There are two promotions at the price of one.
Right.
You just have to watch them.
Yeah.
And
You have, I mean, and you have that luxury of doing that, and there isn't a low point in being able to not find this stuff anymore. It isn't as difficult if you have subscription to IWTV or Smart Mark Video or whatever it is, uh, Powerbomb TV, so on and so forth. Um, you're really you're set up for so much shit. On top of the fact that they keep adding stuff that's like of years old, multiple years old, and we're talking about decades old for some of the stuff that they're adding in. Um, and then obviously like the ones that strive the most are the newer promotions. Obviously, like you said, ICW, they really got to turn into that niche market right away. Especially for that, for what they were setting up with, like the pit stuff and a rope steel. They really got to throw that right out right away. And No Peace Underground, same deal. They now have a perfect opportunity and platform to really be seen on a different level. And people are actually excited to watch their shows. And like, it's funny to go on Twitter and see like, people talking about the No Peace show or they're getting excited about it.
yeah,
We start
it's
seeing
it's
cross.
becoming a thing.
Right. Like you mentioned GCW on a No Peace show last night. So like that put a smile on my face. Like that's what you want to see. Like I would like to see that, especially at a time like this where we're so in the unknown of what is going to be normal at some point, or if the vaccines work and we finally, I assume we're getting that here soon. Uh, if that starts to help and diminish the issue with the COVID thing, and then we can get back to normal fucking attendance ratings. I can't imagine what the first like show that's gonna hit off with no COVID restrictions, nothing like what the attendance is gonna be for some of that stuff, because I think people are gonna be beyond excited to be at that sort of thing.
Yeah, I hope that people didn't forget how to scream because one of the I recently wrote it on social media, but the main reason why I watched classic shows from maybe classic WCW, WWE stuff to Tournament of Deaths and King of the Death matches, as I told you, Vicious Outcast Wrestling stuff that didn't have the best crowd, but there still was. It's just because I really miss to hear live crowds going nuts for spots. And how they say you can't understand how how much something is important until you lose it. That's
Right.
the legit truth about it.
It's in every aspect of like legitimate life. I'm an advocate for that at this point.
Totally, 100%. Yeah, after that 14-month stop. But I hope everything is right now. You're gonna have that match with Jimmy. You're gonna kill it just as you've recently done. You even killed it in a. I actually saw you in a comedy match against Eddie Only. Well, it was excellent comedy, but Eddie Only is awesome. I mean, it's not. I in my point of view, I think is a good wrestler because I saw him fight in the. I can't remember how that tournament was called, but it was in the main event of the show. Anyway, uh, is not maybe the best wrestler when it comes to it, but is one of the best entertainers. Really, I want to kill him.
Yeah.
I curse the day in which I understood English for the first time when I hear him talking. Like I will fucking choke him to death when I
Right.
hear it. Maybe more than MJF.
Right.
And really, I saw you in that comedy match, and I
Yeah.
loved it.
Yeah, he was so animated. He did wonders for me because, we knew. I'm like, I'm going to be able to play off his character so easily. I wasn't too worried about it, and I'm like, it just hit me and him like talking about setting it up, and I'm like right in the beginning when he was having trouble like lighting a cigarette and shit, and I'm gonna just fucking take the cigarette from you and fucking light it up myself, and like right from that gate, like his mind just started going and was like, all right, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this thing. I'm like, oh, we got this glass case out there. He's like, can we fuck with that? You think we can get away with fucking with that? I'm like, yeah, we can get away with that.
There was actual glass.
Yeah, yeah, it was just a glass gun case that was in the back of that pawn shop or whatever. A funny little added note: whenever we were heading up to that show, uh, I don't know who mentioned, but it obviously had somebody with a little bit of an accent. Okay, that told us it was in the back of a pawn shop, and I
Yeah.
said pawn, and I'm like, we're in back of a porn store. I'm like, let's go in the porn store. And I'm like, let's go look around the porn store before we go in. So we thought it was a porn shop. When we got there, it was a pawn shop. I'm
All
like,
right. Can you say the name of this really accented guy?
I don't know. I don't know who it was said to directly because it wasn't said directly to me, but it might have been. It might have been D'Amato. I don't know. But somebody told somebody in our car that, and they never mentioned who said that they were going to be in a pawn store.
Yeah, that doesn't happen with Italian because it's a really, it's not a logical language like English,
Right,
and there's not, that words that change with slang, but they actually sound the same.
right. Because
I
I mean,
do I do the after school activity with kids as a work right now,
yeah,
and I always, after years of trying to learn and get the best as I can, I teach them English because they're really, really, really bad at it. Italians are really bad at English for the most part. So
I can
there are,
understand that in general. I mean, I've tried to learn what's like 3 or 4 different languages here in the past at least 7 years or 8 years, and it's like I only pick up certain things, and then once in a while I have an easier time understanding it than I do speaking it, which is crazy to me.
what in are you talking about? I didn't understand which language you're talking about.
Spanish or Japanese. Um,
Oh yeah, all right.
Spanish probably more than anything. I think it's something that just I don't know. I've connected with the 3 times been to Mexico.
Yeah, you've been there for DTU, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then spending so much time with those guys, you begin to just sort of start to understand what they're talking about. And there would be times where like even if it was like Arrow Boy or something, we'd be talking with his friend and we'd be out eating, and I'd be listening to them talk, and then I would like Arrow Boy speaks pretty good English, so I'd interrupt Arrow Boy and be like, "Are you guys talking about like?" Like an old show from like fucking 15 years ago. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, what the fuck? I'm like, I don't know why this is, it's processing to me. You know what I mean? So I figure the more time I spend around it, obviously the more time I spend around, different people, different languages, it just becomes a little bit more easier. Paquito.
Yeah, poquito. Yeah, or pochino in Italian. But anyway,
That's
uh,
so great that's that close.
yeah, it's more different than what you could think actually. But I mean, it's quite similar. They're both Latin languages, so that's what it is. And I hope to see you in Italy one day so that you
Dude,
can. And everyone that I talk to really hopes to come to Italy. But in my point of view, what really is missing in Italy is a serious deathmatch wrestling show. There has been hardcore matches. There has been light tubes on a couple of occasions, except some backyarders, but not in the positive sense of the term, like Joe Gacy, who was Psycho Joe, or KTB, who was Kyle Smiley. All that guys, funny playing, maybe risk to hurt themselves, but then they laced up the boots and started training seriously. They're not, and I think what is missing in Italy. There's not the death match oriented culture, and I'd love to see some glass as you know it
right.
should be here in Italy.
I,
So
I think that it's out of the question, man. I mean, it's depending on, you know, when the world kind of returns to normal. I don't think that if I said that to Lauderdale, you know, tomorrow and said, you know, what do you think about Italy when the world's bright? You know, like I don't think that would be out of the question. It just would be a matter, I think, of arranging and setting that up, you know, with obviously somebody's got to have a ring down there, that sort of thing. And, you know,
I know at least hundreds of people who will come, including me. I would literally drive 8, 9 hours, which I know it's not too much in the United States, but here in Italy is a lot.
yeah.
So
I
I
mean,
will I will probably drive for all the time that it needs to come see GCW. I was supposed to go to the United Kingdom, didn't buy the tickets, but I was interested in going, but then COVID hit. Fuck COVID.
yeah,
Fuck the pandemic.
it pisses me off.
Anyway, man, I really hope to see you here, as I told you. And do you have anything else to say? Like, you wanna call out someone else, as I always do with my interview? You wanna send another message to Joker, or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy because like you know, I think about guys that like I wish I always wish that like I could I almost made this happen, and this was like so close to coming to fruition that I'm kind of bummed it didn't. But then I was told that maybe they wouldn't want to go, like go. And I said, I don't know that it is about going, but I was, you know, it was me and Raven. Me and Raven was gonna happen. Raven of today, obviously, would be a whole different world than Raven of, you know, ECW days or WCW or even WWE days. But like that, I mean, ideally, that's what I would love to have had happen at least at some point. But I don't think that that can happen. But you know, that's something that's like it's kind of like I don't know. I'd still do it, kind of thing. You know, just to see what
I
we could.
hope. I hope.
It would
I'm
be cool
really
too. You know,
I really
uh,
love Raven. Greatest mind in pro wrestling in history, maybe. I
yeah.
mean,
I watched his shoot interviews while I was training because that was actually part of like the training regimen was to watch his Secrets of the Ring with Raven DVDs that Ring of Honor had put out. And those DVDs nowadays, I don't even know. I haven't checked eBay or anything like that, but
you can actually find them, but not in a much legal way, in a very legal way, you know.
uh, well,
So if you don't have money, if you're poor as fuck,
yeah, any way that I could obtain them, I will go about doing that because I don't think there's really a whole lot of. I mean, some of these sources for some of this stuff is it's not on any streaming service. It's not on any High Spots network. It's not on, you know, a couple of these things. A lot of those things get lost in the shuffle. So like, yeah, I would obtain that any other way I could, at least for that. But yeah, and I hope me and Joker happens, man. That's all I'm
me
hoping.
too.
And I hope when it does, it's exactly how I want it to see it happen. So, which is like I want it to be fucking rough, and it's just
I
the way I want it.
I'd pay really good money to see you and Joker both in a ladder match,
Yeah,
like Chris Cash environment, you know,
yeah,
and also in a good professional wrestling, pure professional wrestling matches.
yeah.
I'd love to see you. I love to see that. And so I think this is the end of the interview. And best of luck also with facing Tuchel Scorpio at weekend at Sean's. That's
Yes.
gonna be a good match for sure. Scorpio
Yeah.
can
Looking,
still go.
he still goes, man. He still goes so good. And I watched I watched the match with him like maybe it was like 3 months ago, and I'm like seeing some of the shit he was doing. Just
That's mind blowing. That's mind
I
blowing. So thank you for your time, and for those who haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do it. Comment the video, leave a comment, leave a like, and support G-Raver on social media. Buy shirts, his merchandise. or maybe even go to the fucking United States and have a tattoo from him. You know, I hope to do it one day because I only have one and it's not that big. And best of luck to do G-Raver for his future matches and moments. And this is the end, fuckers. Say hi, G-Raver.
Peace, guys.
Peace and love, dudes.